Hello and welcome everybody to today's edition of Mexico News Network's Breaking News Business. I'm your host, Elliot Bullman. Remember to follow us on all our social networks and to catch us every day by logging onto our website, mexiconewsnetwork.com, for relevant stories and news. Let's start with today's show. Mexico awaits with bated breath the arrival of President-elect Donald Trump to the White House this Friday, the 20th of January. With all the bluster and anti-trade vitriol that Mexico has endured during Trump's pre- and post-election campaign, how will Mexico respond if he carries out his threats, which would have deep economic consequences? Firstly, by reminding his administration that the relationship is mutually beneficial. Alongside trade, Mexico has been a partner in controlling illegal immigration. It stops many of the 200,000 or 300,000 Central Americans and others who try every year to sneak across Mexico into the United States. Mexico should also seize on Mr. Trump's occasional hints that he's open to renegotiating NAFTA rather than ripping it up. The 23-year-old agreement could usefully be updated to cover new sectors such as digital commerce and energy. If Mr. Trump is really determined to start a trade war, Mexico has few good options. There's scope for artful use of targeted measures within the rules of NAFTA and the World Trade Organization, an approach that Mexico has wielded adroitly before. In 2009, after America blocked Mexican lorries from operating north of the border to protect the jobs of American drivers, Mexico imposed tariffs on nearly 100 American products, from Christmas trees to felt-tipped pens, choosing industries with clout in congressional districts whose representatives had a say in the dispute. The American bloc was eventually lifted. Mexico's best defense against a bullying neighbor, however, will be to seek freer trade elsewhere and to strengthen its own economy. It needs to build more infrastructure. Whereas northern Mexico has good transport links to America and the coasts, the poor south is largely cut off. Mr. Trump's anti-Mexican populism threatens to help usher in a leftist government in Mexico that will abandon reforms, but it makes those modernizing policies more necessary than ever. In other news, for the first time ever, Mexico overtook Canada as the number 2 exporter of goods for the US in 2016. In a sign of how economic ties have deepened between the two countries. News of this increased economic integration between the US and Mexico is naturally raising eyebrows from economists at a time when President-elect Donald Trump has repeatedly advocated a more protectionist agenda. For the first 10 months of 2016, shipments from Mexico exceeded $245 billion, according to Commerce Department figures, ahead of Canada's $230 billion. It's the first time ever that the US has bought more imports from its neighbor to the south. The trend of surpassing Canada puts China and Mexico as the top 2 exporters to the US, reflecting the strong pull of lower-cost jurisdictions for the US economy. Canada, which is one of the highest cost bases in the Americas, has seen its share of US imports fall to about 13% from around 20% 2 decades ago. The growth of trade links between Mexico and the US hinges on motor vehicles. Over the past 6 years, Mexico secured foreign direct investment in factory investments totaling $25.9 billion, according to the Center for Automotive Research in Ann Arbor, Michigan. Canada's cost base is also a big part of this story. Canada's labor bill swelled, with unit labor costs in US dollars, a key index of competitiveness, increasing by 64% since 2002, even with Canada's currency weakening in recent years. By contrast, the weakened peso on the dollar means that goods coming from Mexico are cheaper for Americans, which then, taking that a step forward, allows Americans to buy more for the same dollar amount relative to before. In other headlines, Mexico said on Tuesday it will offer holders of undeclared capital abroad a hefty tax incentive to bring it back home in a bid to secure around $10 billion in investment and fight off the economic squeeze from the incoming Trump administration. Confirming a Reuters report, the government said it will offer an 8% repatriation tax on those funds returning to Mexico in 6 months, provided they go into investments including fixed assets and property for at least 2 years. Mexico's top income tax rate is 35%. To qualify for the incentive, tax must be paid 15 days after money is transferred. The government said the powerful CCE business lobby estimated the plan could yield $10 billion in investment. Mexico is facing pressure from US President-elect Donald Trump, who's looking to cut taxes and has threatened a significant border levy on companies that ship Mexican-made goods to the US marketplace. The initiative, which was floated last week, is in line with similar moves by both Chile and Argentina. And finally, let's turn to the markets. The Mexican peso increased 0.21% to 21.96 from 21.92 in the previous trading session. Historically, the Mexican peso reached an all-time high of 21.97 in January of 2017 and a record low of 0.01 in May of 1972. IPC Mexico increased 0.78% to 46,361 from 46,003 in the previous trading session. Historically, the Mexico stock market IPC index reached an all-time high of 48,694.9 in August of 2016 and a record low of 14,008.2 in August of 2005. This was all for today. Thank you for staying with us. I'm your host, Elliot Bullman. Remember to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Google+. And you can log on to MexicoNewsNetwork.com for more information on Mexico and the world. Until next time.